So we had a conversation. You were on the Question Guy podcast, and I so appreciated that. But I think there was so much more to talk about, and giving everything that you had mentioned, one of the things I kind of wanted to come back around and circle back with was your experience at this Bob Berg retreat that you went to. I think it was your first time at one of these retreats, and it was, quite frankly, a brand new experience for you. Can we dive a little deeper into that conversation?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Cool. So we won't get into, how you got there and all that stuff. Some of that was covered in the previous conversation. But at that event, you told me that everybody was given an hour to share their story, and you took full advantage of that. What was that experience like of sharing your story of all the grief moments and even the victories that you had up until that moment?
Thank you for getting me to revisit it. It was life altering in ways that I have never experienced before. And I think, excuse my voice, the the way to explain it is that the people that are part of the mastermind retreat are in a conference room, if you will, in Florida. So you're surrounded by light, and it was a warm time of year. It was the end of July. And I don't know if other people have expressed or experienced this, but I had never met any of these people before. And here we are for dinner Sunday night, and then 2 full days from 8 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon with people you've never met. And the thing that was new for me as I really had there, I knew it was going to be transformational just because I did, but I didn't know that I would have that level of trust and comfort and vulnerability in a room of people that I'd never met before. And I think that's the thing that is important to share. And I was given the 1 hour, everyone had a 1 hour time to talk about whether they wanted their business to be helped, or they were going through a life change, or they wanted somebody's opinion. And prior to going in, I think I shared, I made a list of the things that were or had occurred over the decades in my life that I had faced, and I guess I would use the word overcome, and ended up in that room that day. And the reception that I received was something that I think made it the most transformational. Uh, It started where I told why I was there, and I just sobbed as the words came out of my mouth.
So
And
can we look at that? So there's
yeah,
two things here. Why you were there, I don't, because I think you just went on, well, what the hell, right? Why not? It's kind of, why not go if there's an opportunity?
well,
Um,
colleagues of mine had gone and had
okay.
spoken very highly of it.
Okay. So somebody spoke highly of it, but it's still it's a risk, it's a chance. You said going to a retreat that you were unfamiliar with, and then being in a room with a bunch of strangers. So multiple risks there. But you also talked about you went in there maybe consciously or subconsciously with an agenda because you just brought your stuff with you. You said that you could go in there and talk just about anything. I went up with my business. I'm going through a personal transformation. Whatever that thing is like present in your moment, but you came in and excuse this with a whole lot of baggage. And you came in with you. And did you have an agenda or did you have an intention to bring all this stuff with you?
It's a great question. My intention, because of what I had learned from the other people that had gone, and what happens in that room stays in that room. But what they had shared with me was, for them, it was transformational. So because those people are people that I know, love, and trust, I went there with that mm, psychology, that psychological trust that's why I was going. I think for me and for others that may understand the avenue that you're taking me down, my life had been since the beginning of 2022. I had been doing things since January of 2022 that I had never done before. I was stepping in, like I was in a speakers group, standing on stage in a 2-month course, learning how to speak publicly and correctly. And I had just had a cataract surgery the day I got on that stage the first time. And so I think it, the fact that my life was ready to let down fears, right? Lack of confidence. It was just had thrust me into that time when back to your original question, when I started slobbering all over the table, for lack of a better, more beautiful way of saying it, I I was in I was in a bubble of love of trust. So it just came gushing out of me. And for those of us that are listening who have been to psychiatrists or psychologists or have been to people who are trying to help us, which I've never had that kind of experience. It was like my whole life came out on that table. The next step, and please interrupt if you want to, was the welcome, um the love that I felt from the people in that room, and the things that they said back to me in support to help take me into that next place was what was palpable, because none of us, one person had done it before, but the rest of us had not. And so, like, they didn't all say, "Oh my God, you're a crazy person, get out."
Did you
They all,
want them to, I don't think you would have
no, but you
wanted
know what
that.
I mean? When you're talking to people that are may not spill their guts like that,
Right.
yeah, I didn't think about that. Like, it was the second day, so the trust was already in place. But I've never been that vulnerable before. I mean, of course, my close friends and I have helped each other through things, but I've never been in a room of strangers spilling my guts on a table and then having them lift me up and give me back the support that they did.
And that is a flip of the coin, is what I say. It's a two-part risk for you. One, you have to allow yourself or give yourself permission to kind of become vulnerable and to share your story, which many people are afraid to do. But you went ahead and took it. It was as if your life at that time it just told you it's time to let go. Something inside, something outside of you said it's time to let go. It's time to be transformed. But then the other part of that is the risk of receiving help. Sometimes we go into a situation where um, we're afraid of what others may think of us or what others may say to us, or either in front to our faces or behind our back. So it's a risk on both sides. But you openly then received something very powerful. And again, I know everything that happened in that room stays there, but talk about the experience itself. What was then transforming inside of you that allowed you to say, this is good, this feels good, this is the right thing to do?
That they received me and then gave me feedback on one, the fact that, well, the words that came out of their mouths was, you have taken tragedy in your life and turned it into triumph. Those are tears of joy, not of sadness, that that by opening myself up, that I really was saying that I had accomplished a lot. So then everyone gathered around me, not, we were at a round table, but to give me their thoughts as to what I should do next. And I think being led here to talk with you today is part of the beginning of that journey that day, because doing podcasts, as we talked about yesterday, TED Talks, writing my book, being on a stage was what they said to me. Like, you better get your confidence because you have to tell this story because people need to hear you and will be helped by you. And thinking last night and over these last hours since we last spoke, the ability to do this is it seems clear to me that I've been preparing for this all my life, or as the different things would happen, because I never thought of myself as being extraordinary or special because I had had my ass kicked so many times. And I did think that I was put here to help people, right? But I didn't know how to get to that next step. And when this opportunity to go to the mastermind was put down, and the way it unfolded was so simple, then it made sense to do it.
A friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, said that the universe has a unique way of circling back when it's time to grow, take that next step, mature, whatever it is. Because a lot of times we tend to face life without any intention, without any goal or purpose. And then if we're not learning the lessons, it may take a month, it may take a year, it may take a couple of years. It circles back and says, it's time to teach you what the next step is. It sounds like through all of those, hurdles that you've come across, that this finally was the stage, and I put that in air quotes, not necessarily a talking stage, but it was the time and the place where you then became receptive to the transformation, the beginning of something new. Am I on
Well,
target here?
yeah, of course. Because remember, I believe I said yesterday, that book, Bob's book, The Go-Giver, was given to me in January of 2019.
Yeah,
Again, in June of 2019, I never read it
right.
until January of 2023. And then things unfolded from there. Like we said yesterday,
Mhm.
when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And the fifth law in the Go-Giver book is receptivity. Receptivity is being open.
Right, right.
And that's exactly what you just said.
So, with that being the case, what are you open to now? What do you want to accomplish? What is the heart of your mission?
Is to take this interview and touch lives. And again, I thought of it after we talked yesterday as well, is I have a tremendous amount of wisdom, and that's not coming from an ego base. I think you can tell that. But I've been given, I guess that's why I took the speakers class last year. I've been given these gifts in order to share them with other people. And that's my vision that I now know is going to unfold so that I can help other people. I have been helped along the way. People have appeared when I've needed them, but I've had to do the work myself. The books, the podcasts, the videos, prayer, whatever it takes for people, meditation to get through their lives. But you just asked it a couple of minutes ago, like you have to be open to it. So I think back to my purpose, it's to help people to open up, to do what I have had the courage to open up to. You use the word risk. To me, I guess then my whole life has been full of risks because it's not a risk to me as much as it is courageous, but at the same time, it's all come naturally because I've just kind of jumped off the cliff and a lot of times without a bungee.
Then I would call that a risk, but if you have a better, more appropriate word,
Yeah, I
I
guess
would,
it is.
I would put that in there.
I
Uh,
guess it is.
because I don't know too many people jumping off a cliff without a bungee cord, and I don't know if we're still doing that in today's day and age.
No, and as I think about that, I wouldn't do that.
So, how then would you inspire people to say, it's okay? It's okay to take the risk. It's okay to feel the pain. It's okay to revisit the hurt because on the other side of that, there's healing.
It's,
How do you help people cross that bridge?
I've thought a lot about that. And I think by sharing my truth builds trust that people can reach out to me and I can help them, even if it's just to talk to them or write to them and let them know that someone else has been through it, whether it's getting hit by a car or having all your money go. When I went through those things, I felt less than, right? Like getting hit by the car, it was like, boom, you've gotten hit by a car. When my dad killed himself, I didn't know who to talk to. When I dated that guy who conned me out of all my money, I was mortified
Mm,
that I had allowed that to happen.
right.
I felt so stupid. And so I think it's being able, being able to do this kind of um, sharing and, the people that that hear us talking is the next steps in me being able to help people. And helping to find that person who can help me finish my book and being on a stage talking to people are what I believe are the best next steps.
I love it. And so, with that being the case, I like to use words as a way of putting us in a space that allows us to help frame our conversation, frame our showing up, frame whatever that needs to be. And so, if you were to engage in the next conversation, what words would you use to kind of get you mentally prepared to say, I'm going to help this person, and this is how? What words do you like to use to help transform others' lives?
The one word for me that has been really resonant over this last year is the word worthiness. is is learning to love yourself first. And that's not by blasting your stuff on social media.
Right.
It's really going inside. And it's not easy work, but once you, whoever is hearing us speak, is willing to open up and to go inside and to identify your hurt, your pain, your love, the things that, and you have to write it on a piece of paper or you listen to it in a book or read a book or keep a journal. It's taking those steps to identify where your how to turn your strength, how to how to identify your strengths. Because I don't like negative words like weakness,
Mhm.
because then that's going to a negative place, right? We all have strengths. We all have our strengths. I know, or I'm learning what mine are, you know what yours are. And it's me helping people. I think that's really the best way to use those words, is helping people to find their strengths and then to take the next steps with those strengths. You know, somebody could be an artist, a singer, a, a tennis player, a painter, like everybody has something special about them. And that when I used to teach wine seminars, I used to get people to look and taste and think about the wine. And not everybody has to like what is written about in some wine magazine or newspaper. But people get intimidated by, oh, that's the new in wine. You might like a polka dot tie. I like a striped skirt. Like all of us are different. All of us have to find do you like red wine? Do you like white wine? Do you love yourself? Do you like blonde hair? Like we have to really figure out who we are and not to be, and this I think is really important to say, I'm not a child that is driven by social media. And these kids today are being driven by influencers.
Mm.
And it's it's kind of overwhelming at 8 years old to think that they're going and buying makeup. And
Mm.
we never grew up in a world like that. So how to help that 8, 12, 16-year-old say, let's sit down and talk about your inner beauty, not that somebody is telling you to go put stuff all over your face. I know I'm off in a little bit of a tangent, but it goes back to identifying the love from within.
Yeah, and the words that you said were worthiness, or a sense of self-worth. You also identified that we all have strengths, and you like to focus on what you can do versus what you can't do, or are not so
Or
much.
find what you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, and I love what you just said, your inner beauty, you know, your inner sense of value. So important, because what we see a lot of the time, and you just said it, especially on media, social media, is just an outward appearance. Now, those of us who are more mature adults, and I'm 54 here, recognize that typically what we see is only on the surface. We all have issues, we all have problems, we all have our own skeletons in our closet that we'd like to hide. But when we're allowed to, and as you said, face them, identify them, and overcome them, our life really does change.
It really does.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I made the mistakes that I did, like dating a con man,
Right.
I was, I hid from my friends. I couldn't confide in them.
Yeah.
But I was in quicksand when that happened. Everything was just falling apart. So I didn't have a nervous breakdown or anything. I had to survive. So instead, God allowed me to be hit by a car.
Like I said, the universe, or whatever you want to call it, comes back and says, hey, it's time to wake up. It's time to do something different.
Well, as I say to people, I was a performing arts major, so I was a dancer. I'm a walker. I use my legs. And God's like, okay, I'm going to give them back to you. But right now, you're going to sit on your butt for as long as it takes for me to help you rebirth. And I really believe that. He stopped me in my tracks.
Mhm.
And I started, no pun intended, get it, tracks,
Oh
car
yeah,
track.
I'm right with you. I mean, but it's totally true. I mean, you've got to, and sometimes it's going to hit us where it hurts the most in order
Yeah.
to get our attention. Yeah.
That's right. So when you go back to words, right, that would be that inner beauty. And, nobody talked to us like this when we were children. Oh my God, nobody in my family said, where's your inner beauty? Everybody held everything inside.
Mm.
Nobody talked about it. Like I remember on my 40th birthday, I gave my grandmother a photo that the guy I was dating took of me at my surprise party. And I looked really good. And my stepmother, no pun intended, my grandmother said, "This doesn't look like you. It's too pretty."
Wow.
I ripped that thing right out of her hand and I found the ugliest, worst photograph from that party and reframed it with that in it
Oh,
and gave it to her. And so times like that, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, that I can go back to that without emotion and say to you, that helped me find my inner beauty.
good.
Because I was like, oh, are you kidding me? No, 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 no. And she was, a German person. Like, I don't think she meant to hurt me. It just popped out of her 90-year-old mouth.
Yeah.
And I could have like really gone off the deep end from that. But instead, and so when we look back on our lives, it is that word I used with you yesterday. It's that tapestry that brings us here now. I haven't told that story in forever because I hadn't thought about it. I mean, how dare you? I would never talk to somebody that way. But that generation at that time, she was born in 1900. She would be 123 now.
Wow. So to
You
kind of,
compliment.
so I want to put this conversation to somewhat of a close because there's so much more, but I don't have too much time. I want to focus on your inner beauty right now. Give us some words about how you see your own inner beauty. Who are you today?
Thank you for asking. I think, again, it goes back to what we talked about in our last conversation, was what my trainer gave me. And I'm going to, as usual, give you a longer answer than a couple of words.
It's okay.
When he said to me, when we did our Zoom workout classes during COVID, he said, I am going to, if you do the work, we're going to transform your body. And we did. And and it wasn't hard. What else did I have to do but work out in the morning and at night and, sit here all day staring at a screen? But that's that over these last few years is where I found my inner beauty, my worthiness. And for the first time in my many decades on this planet, I have learned to love myself, my body, and my being. I could never, ever have said that to you before 2020, before 2019, or whenever that madness started. I didn't have that in me to say that. And so it is through, and it's to get to that place has required a lot of soul searching,
Mhm.
reading, writing, talking, with friends in a deep way, getting on a stage in front of, I can't tell you how many people were there who I had never met before and started blabbing with two new lenses in my eyes. It's really, I think I'll go back to your word, the risk, but it's also being vulnerable and saying to myself, okay, I can see again in a way that I haven't, and here I go. Or don't, like, I could have said no, but that's embarrassing. So you have to just get up there and do it and overcome those fears. So that going back to your question is accepting, loving, finding my worthiness, finding my voice and speaking my truth. And that's taken a lifetime. It doesn't have to, because young people today are exposed to so much more, they just have to be willing to listen,
Right.
and not to people that are telling them on social media what is right, because a lot of that is not.
Right. Carol, thank you so much for this conversation. I do appreciate it. We have to do it more frequently, please.
Thank you so much. I would love to.